My experience was in 1987, after my first open heart surgery, which had been lengthy. It was after recovery, and now I'm back in a room and I'm dying. I was not aware of any movement, such as going through a tunnel. Instantly, I was in the presence of God, and I was hearing that I was not to fear as I was all right. Instantly all fear was gone and I knew that I was all right. I do remember many other people being there. Some I recognized and some not, although I was aware that I knew them all. It is impossible to explain the love God has for us. No one would ever voluntarily leave God. I ache to return. Then a female preacher, whom I had met once about a year before, stepped forward, and our task was to pray with and for specific people in different areas of Baylor Hospital in Dallas, where I was located. We went to these people through space, walls and closed doors. I could not tell that I was out of my body. Everything looked and felt normal. I remember thinking that this must be the same kind of body that Jesus was in after coming out of the tomb. He went through walls, yet ate and drank, was seen and was felt by his companions. I do not know how much time was involved. When I returned to my bed, they were giving me blood, and I was told that the machine processing it during surgery had damaged my blood. I intended to check to see if the female preacher had died, but I never did. Maybe she could have been there and been alive. 4 years after this experience, I could not tell this story without crying like a baby, because I would remember the feeling of God's love. Next, NDE. I went to my doctor's office to obtain treatment for a bad chest cold. He determined that I had bronchial pneumonia and gave me a penicillin injection. He requested that I wait at least 15 minutes in his office waiting area before going home, just in case I had any kind of reaction to the penicillin. I did so, and within a few minutes, I felt lightheaded and sensed a blackness closing in on my field of vision. I called for a nurse for help. The doctor and a nurse ran out, got hold of me by each arm and started to guide me back into his office. I collapsed and they eased me unconscious onto the floor. He immediately gave me a shot of adrenaline to counteract the effect of the penicillin. While I was unconscious on the floor, I sensed that I was floating above my body and over toward a corner of the room. I watched as the doctor and nurse administered the adrenaline, and I heard them talking about the event that had just happened. I had no extended experience, just the sensation of floating, watching what was happening in the room, and listening to them speak. As soon as the adrenaline took effect, I sensed that I was suddenly back in my body and talking to the doctor and nurse again. They notified my husband to come in since he was waiting for me in the car. He waited with me for about 30 minutes, until I was able to stand and walk out of the clinic. When I was 10 years old, my parents got a divorce. It was 1976, October I think. Anyway, our family was split up, and before I knew it, I was living with my grandparents. After a short time, I came to realize that our family was never going to be together again. I went to bed one night very upset, crying and hyperventilating. Somewhere in that time frame, I was face down in my pillow, because I did not want my grandparents to hear me. I guess I lost consciousness at this time. I began to feel very light, and a little dizzy. The next thing I saw was my body below me. It was very pale looking and not moving, face down in the pillow, but to me it wasn't me, because I was here above this body that was mine. I guess about 5 feet above it, and then I got this pulling feeling like the way the current pulls you at the beach when the tide goes out. Then I started to rotate, until I was facing the corner of the ceiling. At this time, there was an explosion of white, very, very bright light. Then the room started to fade away, and this light took the shape of a tunnel that surrounded me. At this time, I was being pulled at a high rate of speed, and there was somebody with me. I felt safe and loved and at peace. This person was transparent, but I could still see him smiling at me and saying to me, but not talking with his mouth, but his mind telling me, everything is fine. Then at that moment, we were in this place of beautiful warm light and millions of people all saying, the time is near. Be ready for the day. It was like a loud roar, but very loving the way it was said, and the music was like nothing I have ever heard to this day. It went right through you and you were the music as well. Then I saw this being of light. Very bright. So bright that you could not look at this being. I tried to look, but it was much too bright, and this voice said to me, "It's not your time. You have much to learn, go learn. Don't worry, you shall be with me someday. Go from me now." I didn't want to go, but I had no choice in the matter. I started to be turned and pulled back towards the light of the tunnel, except it was much faster than before. Then the next thing I knew, I was going back through the light and into my room. Then I saw my body, and I didn't want to go back at all. I fought with everything I had, but I just was slammed right into my body. It was cold, stiff, heavy. Then I felt this cold air rushing into my lungs, and I heard a voice say, "Breath." Then I was awake and coughing and gagging and shaking because I was so cold, but I could not move well at all. After a while, I started to move a little better and got warmer. After that, I got into religion. I was reading Oral Roberts' books and the Bible. Even though I didn't understand much of it, I wanted to learn.